With the Forged and Fog and Tools of Torment chapters not really amazing the player base and maybe even boring some into literal extinction, Behavior was under a lot of pressure for this anniversary chapter to do well. When I first saw the chapter's trailer, I thought the killer was fascinating, yet everyone proclaimed they will be a Skull Merchant 2.0, and Behavior really showed these people not to judge a book by its cover. The Singularity is by far one of the most interesting killers to come to the game, and I am very proud of what Behavior were able to do, even if I will not main them. I will always find some way to love the killers and survivors who enter the game, not you two, and this killer and survivor are no exception. Also, I am not really interested with the map, since although it is very pretty, it is behavior map balancing we're talking about, we're not expecting much. What I am instead interested in is the perks. These things can either be seen in almost every match you play or come up as nasty little surprises that can be engaging to face. Then there's also the fact that many of my videos that I make are focused on exploring perks, so what a surprise that I want to get a head start and look at these perks and explain how I feel they will do. This video, however, will attempt to be a little different from other people who review the perks, since people either say, this thing is broken, or this thing is terrible, and that's the end of the story. I will explore all 6 of the new perks in this chapter, give my honest thoughts about the perks, and mention any changes Behavior could try to solve any flaws the perks have. Also, I'm not a fortune teller, I can't read the future, so if some miracle happens and one of these perks actually is worse or better than I described them, it is because players realize their full potential after the PTB. With all that said and done, let us finally start the celebration by looking at the Singularity's perks, since these were the only ones I could test with custom matches. I main Skull Merchant, so as expected I got no friends, so how could I test the Survivor perks? However, I will still give my honest thoughts about what I have seen, and I have a lot to say about them. Okay, let's first start with genetic limits.
I'm stuffed now. I couldn't have enough. Okay, one more. I'm gonna have one more, and then that'll be it.
The easiest to explain of all 3 of Singularity's perks, but also the most average. Don't get me wrong, sometimes a one-trick pony of a perk can be fine, but it ends up feeling rather plain for the majority of the player base. Genetic Limits activates once a survivor heals, where the healer is inflicted with exhaustion for 32 seconds. This is a very big exhaustion timer, the largest that we've seen from any anti-exhaustion perk the killers have, yet I still find the perk rather flawed. The problem with the perk is not only that it applies to the healer, but also the fact you need to heal for the perk to trigger. Veteran players are smart enough to know when it is the right time to heal, but newer players will always worry about being injured, so this perk ends up feeling rather noob-stompy in nature. Along with this issue, the perk does not really provide a reason for you to heal. You could go through the whole match injured and Genetic Limits is just left there to look pretty. I do think another anti-exhaustion perk is not entirely bad, but with how Genetic Limits exists, I feel it will end up being rather annoying for new players and pathetically useless against veterans. I would recommend 2 different ideas for Behavior to try with the perk. These changes are mainly focused on smoothing out any rough edges with the perk, along with providing more utility the perk desperately needs. Starting with the first idea, which is probably the simplest, apply exhaustion to both survivors for 20 seconds. The perk is designed around Singularity's core concept of harming team play, so having a perk that spreads negative effects would make much more sense. Rather than just punish one person, why not the whole group? I also think reducing the exhaustion on the perk for this added utility is a wise decision, not only to help not punish new players, but also to provide additional utility when facing veterans. This change, however, does not solve the problem of providing a reason to heal, but I have a rather evil idea that would make this perk interesting for chasing. The second change idea splits the perk into 2 parts. First, when you start a chase with an injured survivor, Genetic Limits activates, applying Oblivious to the survivor for 15 seconds. The second part is what currently exists, except reducing the exhaustion down to 20 seconds. 32 seconds overall is very high for an anti-exhaustion perk. If Behavior want to add more to the perk, they need to reduce what makes the perk oppressive for new players. Overall though, Behavior could leave this perk alone, since it is mostly okay. I am sure it will find some use in niche builds, but it could be better. Next we have Forced Hesitation.
Okay, Candace. Looks like it's up to you.
This is actually a very evil perk with a powerful effect, but Behavior were smart enough to apply clever limitations to its power. Whenever you down a survivor, Forced Hesitation activates, slowing all survivors who are 16 meters close to the downed survivor for 10 seconds. The slow is 15%, which is similar to a Clown Bottle, and I am sure many of you are groaning at the thought of moving against a Wesker combined with the infection slow. The perk also goes on a 40-second cooldown once the slow ends. This is actually a perk I have no real issues with, at least for now. It's similar to how Eruption was before its rework, where players were not really using the perk because of its harsh limitations, but once they were tuned down by Behavior, everyone started to run the perk, non-stop. I think Behavior will, however, need to keep an eye on Forced Hesitations, as this perk can become a rather annoying thing if left unchecked. In my opinion, Behavior can release the perk the way it is, and it will find dedicated niche builds for certain killers. I'm suspecting Wesker because, why not? The perk is also a nice anti-flashlight perk, which, slowing people down, forces them into positions much earlier than they want. I do think it is mostly fine, just something Behavior should keep an eye on just in case it starts to cause trouble. Lastly, for Singularity, we got Machine Learning. Hey, this is my most favorite perk of the bunch.
There's a couple of little glitches with certain commands, like if I try to use the arrow with the balloon, see what happens. So yeah, pretty good game, 8 out of 10, would play again.
This perk, when first reading, sounds rather complex, but after a few minutes you begin to understand what is going on. To simplify its effect, when you kick a generator, Machine Learning activates, marking that gen is compromised, then turning its aura yellow. If you kick a different gen, that becomes the new compromised target and the old one is removed. If a compromised gen is completed, you are granted Undetectable and a 7% haste boost for 30 seconds. This actually is a very cute perk. Not only is it mostly unique for DBD, but its effect is actually very powerful, as we all know when we see a Skull Merchant running you at Mach 10. I can't wait to run this on Skull Merchant purely to turn her from a sociopathic CEO into a literal race car. The perk can overall be left alone on Behavior's side, its effect is very powerful, and is limited by the fact it can only trigger 5 times at most. More feels like 2. However, I would not mind if Behavior were to give a small buff, increasing its duration from 30 to 40 seconds. This, however, is more of a want than a need, because the perk already is very good, and I can imagine certain creatures finding a way to remove my fun if this happened. But overall, it is good. In the words of a wise man, all of Singularity's perks are delightfully average.
perch.
There's nothing inherently wrong with them and they do their jobs well. However, they will not be run on every killer, since they have flaws that continue to harm them, or they just do not match certain killer playstyles. The Survivor perks, however, are a different story.
I need my glasses.
Let's first look at the least problematic of the bunch, since I can only handle so much stress at a time, and I think the Troubleshooter is overall fine. Troubleshooter activates once you're in a chase, and you see the aura of the gen with the most progress, and if you drop a pallet, you see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. The perk deactivates after leaving chase for 10 seconds, and hey, this perk is actually pretty good. It does a lot of good things for solo queue players, notifying them where not to go, and providing an interesting aura read that can help against killers who wish to mind game the pallet and not kick it like a human. I would not mind if they increase the aura read from dropping a pallet by 2 seconds, since this can be a mixed reward if you're on an open map, but it is overall good. Many players will find the perk rather dull and not really run it, but I think it's an amazing addition to the game, not only for new players but veterans alike. The other two, however, are not good for the game. Instead, they are really, really abusive. Let's first look at Scavenger.
That's good. More. Weevil. Free!
Where is it going?
The overall feelings for the perk from the player base is that it is very good. However, what prevents the perk from being broken is that not everyone will run Scavenger. Hey, not everyone plays Skull Merchant and Knight, so clearly we can ignore their core flaws and leave them the way they are. Firstly, let's look at what Scavenger does to explain what is wrong. The perk activates when you're holding an empty toolbox. If you land 4 great skill checks, the toolbox is completely refilled. This is a one-time deal, but wait, there's more! Scavenger also allows you to rummage through a chest to fetch a yellow toolbox. Oh no. I'm getting flashbacks to something from way back when. when the survivor perks were not so stupid. Scavenger is a very powerful perk, and when combined with Built to Last if you're playing Killer, I recommend you bring Deadlock, since you will need it. To explain what I'm complaining about, imagine you use a full toolbox, that's 1 use. Then Scavenger fills it back up, that's now 2 uses. Then we get Built to Last, I will round up the charges, but using all of Built to Last gives 4 uses, and then you can fetch another toolbox from a chest, leading to 5 uses of a toolbox. You pretty much get 4 uses of the toolbox you brought in and 1 more from the chest, and you think this is okay? If you bring a green toolbox, which is considered the best in the game, you can finish gens 21 seconds faster, and combined with Stakeout and Hyperfocus, you can pretty much get Scavenger to trigger even easier, and the gens go faster too. What is even worse, this can be abused in a Swift situation, where people can double up on gens with Overzealous, Prove Thyself, and many more gen perks. This perk is beyond broken the way it is, and if you think it's fine because not everyone brings toolboxes, then you clearly do not understand that perks and killers can have major flaws, even if they are not as common as the popular things. People complain about Skull Merchant because of her 3-genning potential, yet she is not as common as many of the other killer cast. Yet, Scavenger is allowed to be left alone when it can be an even bigger threat? Behavior needs to change this perk, but the problem is not so much Scavenger itself, but toolboxes as a whole. I will leave a video from Otzdarva in the description, but he explains how toolboxes are one of the last few items in the game that are very powerful, and I doubt Behavior are willing to change toolboxes in 1 day, so it would be better to look at Scavenger instead and readjust what it does. I can only think of one idea that would shift Scavenger away from being a toolbox support tool and instead turn the perk into using toolboxes in a unique way. Along with its ability to fetch a toolbox from rummaging, you have 5 tokens at the start of the match. If you're working on a gen, you can press the active ability button, which removes a token and consumes 20% of the toolbox. This action causes the generator to become mute, where the killer is unable to hear the progress on the gen. This effect lasts for 30 seconds, or if the killer damages the generator in any way. You are able to obtain tokens through landing grade skill checks, maxing at 5. I always find Behavior adding toolbox-themed perks always go the boring direction of being simple, where it's just replenish item or increase efficiency. But I think adding unique ideas like this can be fun for players who want to cause disruption in unique ways. Overall though, Scavenger needs to be looked at before it hits live, because the perk can become extremely abusive once players understand what insane combos can be run on it. I would also be fine if Behavior added the perk the way it was if there were also toolbox nerfs, because the toolboxes are extremely powerful and oppressive to face. If you thought this perk, however, was powerful, then get ready, because you are about to see the most insane perk to come to the game since pre-rework Metal a Man. No, I am not joking. Made for this is a perk that literally says to the killer, "Hey, I see you got hit on a survivor." Well, we're not allowing you to do that again. Honestly, for a Scavenger now made for this, I'm beginning to wonder what they sniff at Behavior HQ, because clearly it is allowing them to make some of the dumbest stuff to exist. What Made for this does is when you are injured, you move 3% faster, but the moment you are exhausted, the move speed is removed. Along with this, if you heal another survivor, you are granted endurance for 10 seconds. The second effect is grand. Interesting. Nothing I will complain about. But it's the first part that concerns me. You get injured and you're granted free move speed. Like, how is this allowed? I hear many of you wonder, why silence? There's no reason to complain about the perk, it's only 3% move speed, it's not the end of the world. But I will say to you, have you ever faced someone with Hope as a 110 move speed killer? It is the most evil thing to ever face, and if you combine the 2 perks, you are now literally the same speed as Huntress. I am not kidding. It is the fact that you can stack up this move speed that is the big problem, and can lead to the perk being extremely powerful. The perk also has no downsides. For a veteran player who's able to stay alive while injured, this perk pretty much is them turning on invincibility mode. There is the fact that the perk disables once you're exhausted, but the only exhaustion perks I see this being combined with are Dead Hard and Balanced Landing, 2 exhaustion perks that are used as last-ditch efforts to get away. It is in my opinion that Behavior need to change this perk before it hits live servers, because unlike Scavenger where it is Toolbox that are at fault, Made for This is completely at fault for why it is so strong. I do however think there was an interesting idea for the perk, one that I think could be explored just with a very simple change. Change the ability to gain the move speed from being injured to when the survivor is in the dying state. I always found the second element for the perk weird. I never knew why it was there, but then I began to realize this is for anti-slugging purposes. Imagine you are running to pick your teammate up, but you're either too slow or the killer is camping the body. With this perk, even if you take a hit, you can gain endurance to keep the slug target alive once picked up. I think the move speed should be from something other than being injured, and the perk would be more healthy than it currently is, but if Behavior decided to completely rework the perk, I would not be against it. We are now done with exploring the 6 teachable perks that came out within Transmission, and I have to admit, Behavior really did not want any of them to be bad. I find that they're all very useful in what they attempt to do, or what type of counterplay they want to provide, but with the 2 survivor perks in particular, I find that Behavior will need to be very careful when it comes to changing them. Especially since they are very powerful perks, but their power is hidden by the fact that newer players will not understand why they're so strong. Speaking about changes, however, we got a few perks that were buffed too, so I will give them a fast review on them right now. Pop Goes the Weasel Gun increased to damage from 20 to 30% of current progress, and this is very nice. I find that Pop got hit really hard with the nerfs back in the day, so seeing it getting some love from Behavior is great to see. Next is Deja Vu. It no longer lasts for a short duration, instead lasts forever, and the repair speed boost is increased from 5 to 6%. I find this change to be very useful, especially with how controversial 3-genning has become, even though it is caused by Behavior changing certain perks. Oh no. I still think Deja Vu will not get used very often, however, and for the people who do, and for those looking for 3-gen solutions, Deja Vu is now on the table as a great option. Lastly, we got Flashbang, which is just a consistency update now that items have been relabeled. You can craft flashbangs now while holding an item, and I find this to be very amazing. I think Flashbang could get a bit more attention with how much effort is needed to get the item, but hey, a buff is a buff, we'll take it. Overall, I really like the direction of many of the perks that came out in this PTB, exploring unique ideas, along with providing solutions to issues currently in the game. However, I request Behavior to once again look at Scavenger and Made for This, since these two are extremely problematic the way they are right now. But what are all of your thoughts? Do you agree with me, or do you share different ideas? Do you think these perks need buffs? Maybe even nerfs? Or just maybe, you're crazy enough to think they're just fine. See you all in the next video, and good luck in your games. You will need it if these 2 perks launch the way they are.